Howdy folks, Dave here at Thunder Mesa Studio, where this week I'm back working on the HOn3 Barlow Pass layout. And I think it's high time we got some track laid and some trains running. Don't you? Barlow Pass is my little 4x8 slice of Colorado Rocky Mountain narrow gauge. And my goal this week is to get the cork roadbed down and the track and turnouts put in up here in the town of Barlow Pass, and then get all of that wired for DCC operations. I'm not going to be laying all of the track this week for the entire layout, mostly because I have a couple of big bridges that need to be built before I can really do that. No, my focus is just going to be on the town area up here, getting the track laid, getting it wired, getting everything fine-tuned and running well. So let's take off these models here, which I've put in place temporarily, because the first thing I want to do is sand down this joint right here where these two sections of plywood come together. It could be a little smoother. I think that'll work. Now, these beautiful custom-built turnouts that I'm using on the Barlow Pass were graciously provided by Alan Loiseau over at Empire Trackworks, and I'll put a link in the description down below so you can check out all of the stuff he has to offer. And before I go any further on this, I need to determine which of these turnouts that he built for me goes where. You see, they're all number 6 turnouts, rights and lefts, number 6s, but he very thoughtfully asked which side of the turnouts do I want the throw bar to be on for each of the turnouts on the plan. And that's a very important consideration. And the reason that's important is, say you have, a crossover with two turnouts, parallel to each other. You want that throw bar on the straight route, right? Not in the middle, in between those two tracks where it's going to get in the way. So now I have lettered each of the turnout locations and where the throw bar is going. On this one, it can go either way. I've lettered them A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And then I put a corresponding letter on each of these skeleton turnout kits that I got from Alan. And then when it comes time to put these together, put the rest of the ties in and lay them on the layout, I'll know exactly where each one is supposed to go. I've also glued down some of these Fast Tracks templates, cut them out and glued them down in each of the turnout locations. This is a PDF you can download off of the Fast Tracks website for free. It's a great service that they offer. These are all for number 6 turnouts. And I'm going to lay the cork roadbed right over the top of these. And that way I'll get an alignment which is as perfect as I can make it for when we install the turnouts. Now, before I start laying down that cork roadbed, I just want to show you where I deviated from the plan right here. Look, on the original plan, this crossover is flipped the other way. And the reason I flipped it this way, this was a suggestion from a viewer who saw the plan and said, you know what, operationally, it'll work a lot better if you flip that crossover. That way, when a train pulls in, the locomotive can just uncouple right here, pull out here onto the stub, and then back around and do the runaround maneuver. And you know what? They were absolutely right. So, hey, keep those good suggestions coming. So what do we use for HOn3 roadbed anyway? It's not like there's a lot of commercial products available. Well, fortunately, there are a lot of commercial products available for N-scale. And as it turns out, this Midwest N-scale cork roadbed works really, really well for HOn3 also. Now I'll just lay down a bead of yellow glue. Use a brush to spread it out a little bit. I'm going to start down here at this end where the trestle is going to be, one of the trestles, and just follow that track center line and use the thumbtacks to hold it in place till the glue dries. And then we put the other side in just like that. And now I'll fill in all of this middle part. And this just involves cutting and fitting these pieces of cork to match the turnouts and continue to follow those center lines. Wait. Time out. I thought I had another entire package of N-scale cork roadbed, more than enough to do all of this. I bought some off of eBay a couple of months ago. You see where this is going, right? Well, lo and behold, I opened it up to find out that it's not N-scale cork roadbed, it's HO scale cork roadbed. So, now I've got to beg, borrow, or steal some N-scale cork roadbed from somewhere, or find some 1/8" cork gasket material in order to finish this forward. Unfortunately, I was unable to find any N-scale cork roadbed anywhere, at least none that I could get in a timely enough fashion for this project video. But I was able to find some 1/8" thick cork material, and now I'm cutting it into some strips that are 9/16 of an inch wide to match the width of the separated cork roadbed, and that way I can continue to lay it down in the same way. So now I just need to go and cut a whole bunch of strips like that. Now I can finish up this roadbed using the same techniques I did with the Midwest stuff, cutting each strip to fit, gluing it down. Just like before, I have to do some custom fitting like this for the turnouts. Truth is, it's actually easier with these pieces that aren't beveled on the edges. Going handheld here to give you guys a better view from up top. Here's that completed crossover with the glue drying. Now, I could have cut pads for the turnouts out of that sheet cork. That'd be another way to do it. But this way, using the strips is more economical, at least from a material standpoint. You'll save a little time by cutting out the pads, but you'll save a lot more material by using the strips and cutting each one to fit this way. Also wanted to show you over here, this switch goes to the service track, which basically goes around here behind the coaling tower and the sand house, which will be right here. I don't know how much room I'm going to need for all of that yet, so I'm just cutting the roadbed right off here, and we will finish it at a future date. One thing I can do while I wait for that glue to dry is install the DCC bus. We've got some 14 gauge wire here in red and black installation, and you want a heavy duty wire like this because it's not only carrying the electricity for the trains, but the digital signal as well. I'm using a DCC system from NCE, and we're going to run this wiring bus beneath the roadbed for pretty much the entire run of the layout. That way, when it comes to laying track, I can drop feeders down every 3 feet or so and tap in directly to that power and that digital signal. I'm going to start over here at the end of track, where this is eventually going to connect to a staging yard or our future module. And I'm measuring down about 2.5 inches from the roadbed and going right through the risers, which seems to be the most expedient way to do it. About a 1/4 inch hole. The reason I measure down about 2.5 inches is that's going to give me room to work when it comes time to drop those feeders down. Coming back around the corner here. Now, in some spots where it's not convenient to go through the riser, use an eye bolt instead, or eye screw, and just run the wires through that. As long as you keep them relatively close to the track bed and close to each other, you should be in good shape. And this brings us back around to where the main controls are going to be, where the panel is going to be located for plugging in the NCE power cab. I've determined that eventually this kind of central area right here is where all the controls for the layout are going to be. I haven't quite figured out how all that's going to, work together yet, and I don't have any fascia on here, so I'm just going to temporarily attach the panel to the benchwork right here, and that'll give us a place to hook up while we test everything out. Well, now with the glue dry, I've taken all the thumbtacks out, and I'm going back with my sanding block and leveling off everything, making sure it's all nice and smooth for track laying, no bumps or high spots. And I'm also beveling off the edges of that sheet cork that we used, so it'll match the rest of the roadbed nicely. But before I can lay the track, I need to finish building the turnouts, which are some Code 70 rail soldered to these PC circuit board ties. So I have to go in and add all the rest of the ties. There's a couple of different ways to do this, as usual. One would be the old school way would be to put the ties down on the roadbed and then spike everything down on top of them. That will certainly work, but it's labor intensive and time consuming. So I'm going to use sort of a modified version of the Fast Tracks method. If you go on the Fast Tracks website, they have a method for doing this where you use some contact adhesive on the rails and on the ties, and it speeds things up quite a bit. So I have one of these Fast Tracks templates that shows me the proper tie positions, and Alan is kind enough to provide all of the pre-cut ties and their proper positions for these skeleton turnout kits. So what I have determined that works the best here is to take some double stick tape, put it right where those PC circuit board ties are, and then take that turnout, turn it upside down, align it with the drawing, stick it down to the tape, and then I can go in and attach each of the ties individually. This deviates from the Fast Tracks method in that they want you to glue this entire assembly down to the ties at the same time. They sell a product called, I think it's called Quick Sticks, which is a laser cut run of ties for the turnouts, and you use the contact adhesive and glue the whole thing down at once. I found that I get much better results if I do the ties one at a time. So that's what we're going to do. Take some of this Pliabond contact adhesive, just shook it up real good. Not a great idea to squeeze it directly on the backs of the rails or onto the ties. That would be a mess. I'm going to use a toothpick. The reason I found that this works better is that when you try to do the whole turnout at once, some of them just aren't going to stick. You're going to have high spots and low spots. Variations creep into these materials no matter how hard that we try to keep everything perfect and the same, variations do creep in. So I just find that it works a lot better to try and do this one tie at a time. And you want to apply the contact cement to both surfaces. And when it starts to set up and get tacky, that's when you can apply it to the back of the rails, and I'm just lining it up with the template. Pressing down firmly. Now these aren't going to be as pretty and perfect as if you used a Fast Tracks jig or something like that, but that's okay. I've looked at a lot of narrow gauge track, and very little of it is pretty and perfect. So a lot of variety. I find that doing this way also greatly reduces the risk of getting this goopy stuff on the rails, which you're going to need some acetone to remove if you do. As always, a word of caution, by the way, when working with any sort of solvent-based glues or paints or anything like that, do it in a well-ventilated area. Avoid contact with skin as much as possible. Stuff's not good for you. Down in the frog section right here, the only challenge is working around this pigtail of wires. And now I'm getting down into the point section, where these points move back and forth. And I don't want to put any glue at all on those moving parts, just on the outside stock rails. Again, pressing down on each one of these as I go, making sure it is well adhered. And this is a challenging area down here where the points close against the stock rails, just because it's been filed back, which is great because it gives you a really nice positive lock on each side with the points on the stock rails, but there's not a lot of meat there to attach the ties to, so it takes a little bit of finesse. Now I should be able to just pop this off with a double stick tape. There we go. So one down and 4 more to go. And by the way, as I build each one of these, I'm making sure that the letter from that particular kit goes with it, so it ends up in the right spot in the layout. Okay, all the turnouts are built, and that means it's time to start laying some track. Now, when laying track, I believe it's always a good idea to start with the turnouts and then cut everything else to fit. And for each one of these, I need to drill a hole down through the cork and the plywood to accommodate this little pigtail of wire. About a 1/4 inch hole for each one. Most important thing is to get it located in the right spot. Once the hole is cut, I want to carve out a little bit more of the cork around the top, just to make allowance for that little lump of wiring. Not bad. Now I need to cut a short section of track between these two turnouts. And for all the other track that's not a turnout on the layout, I'm using some micro engineering code 70 HOn3 flex track. To hold the track in place, I'm using some DAP Alex Plus silicone caulk, which works really, really well. It takes a little while to dry, but when it dries, it's nice and clear. I like to spread it out with a putty knife, and I'm avoiding the entire central part of the turnout here where the moving parts are. You just want kind of a thin skin here. Now the wires, once again, go down through the hole. Oh, 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 almost forgot the rail joiners. Using some Walther's code 70 rail joiners. And I'm not going to be soldering the rail connections around the turnouts. I don't find it's necessary, and it allows for a seasonal expansion and contraction. I will be soldering on the sharper curves, however. There we go. Now I'll put a little weight on that. We'll slide these rail joiners back into place here. And on these longer pieces, I'll get them into position. One thing I like about this micro engineering track is that when you flex it, when you bend it, it tends to hold that position, following the center lines of the roadbed. And then I'm just going to add a couple of track nails to hold this until the glue dries, and then I'll go back and I'll remove them. And you can see I'm not pushing them all the way in. I'm only going about that far. That way I can remove them easily tomorrow after this has had a chance to set up. One thing you might notice that I'm not doing is I'm not drilling a hole down here for a switch machine to activate the points. And that is because these switches at the front of the layout will be thrown by hand. That's something special in mind for those. But the ones back in the back there, when I get around to doing those will have probably tortoise slow motion switch machines on them. I should mention that I'm using some Xuron flush cutting rail nippers to cut all of these pieces to length. Now down here where I have this crossover, I don't need to do any sort of special gapping on the rails, like if I were using, say, Electrofrog turnouts like the ones that Pico makes. I would want to have a gap right here or some insulated rail joiners. But since both of these turnouts have isolated frogs, I don't need to worry about that. It's already gapped. This is the last of the parallel tracks through town here. I believe I forgot to mention that the track centers here are 2.25 inches apart, which gives you plenty of clearance in HOn3. Always sight down the track, especially coming out of turnouts. Make sure everything is lined up right. Before I install the final turnout, I thought I should probably let you in on what these wires are for in the back here. There's 3 wires coming off the back. The central wire, the brown one, is connected to the frog. Now you're probably familiar with frog wiring like that, right? So there's a wire coming from the frog that would go to some sort of polarity reversing unit on a slow motion switch machine or a toggle switch or something like that, so that the frog can be powered when trains are passing through without causing a short circuit. Well, this has that, but it also has power wires for the other rails as well. A red wire and an orange wire, and those will get hooked up to the DCC power bus for the inside and outside rail. So absolutely every single part of this turnout will be powered, and we won't have any stalls or anything like that. Now for each one of these turnouts, going back and adding a little pad here of cork underneath the throw bar, and these are about 5/8 of an inch wide by an inch long. Well, now I need a way to throw the points on the turnout, get a nice positive lock on the stock rail, the diverging rail, and ideally we want a method that is also going to route power to the frog at the same time. There are a lot of commercial products out there that you can use, including these nifty tortoise slow motion switch machines. I am going to be using these later in the build on those turnouts on the back side of the layout, but up here in the front, as I mentioned earlier, I want to be able to throw these by hand, just as if I was a brakeman working in the yard. Fortunately, there is a method out there which is easy, well, relatively easy, and inexpensive, and it's to use these electrical slide switches. This is a double pole, double throw electrical switch. And this is a method that's been around for decades. I remember reading about this, I think it was in Model Railroader magazine many, many years ago. I don't know who first came up with the idea, but it's rather brilliant. Let me show you how it works. I was able to get a bag of about 20 of these for, I think it was like 10, 12 bucks, which is very, very economical if you've priced other ground throw methods. And the first thing I need to do is determine where I want it to be. I want to put it about 3/4 of an inch away from this pad right here. So we need to create a little square hole. And that hole actually needs to be about 5/16 by 5/8 of an inch. And use a keyhole saw to take out the rest of that material. And continue to carve and file away till the switch fit down in there. There we go. That should be good enough. So you want it to fit down in there so it's snug, but still removable. You just don't want any play in it. Now I want to drill a hole right to the middle of this plastic switch. Now I've drilled a hole down through the PC circuit board tie. Because I've got some wire here, we're going to make a little linkage between the turnout and the slide switch. This is some .020 music wire or spring wire if you prefer. Put a little right angle bend in one end, and then I want to put a Z bend in. I'm going to go out about, let's see, about a ½ inch. So we've got a little jog in the wire right there. And this is important because the length of throw on the slide switch is longer than the length of throw on the turnout. So you need something to absorb that difference. So we need a little spring there. Now with the switch points all the way over to one side or the other, in this case, I've got it over here to the left, and the slide switch to match. I'm going to mark where I need to bend this again, and we're going to bend that back at a 90-degree angle to this first bend up here. Give yourself about a ½ inch to work with. Now this end goes to the hole in the slide switch, and the little end goes in the turnout throw bar. Again, making sure that both are positioned on the same side. And now I can simply move the slide switch back and forth to change the position of the points. That's not the best part. The best part is that now I can take that brown wire coming from the frog and solder it onto one of these center terminals. I only need the terminals on one side of the switch. I can ignore the other side. So the frog wire gets soldered to the center one, and then the outer terminals go to the different wires of the DCC bus. And so when you throw the slide switch and move the points, it automatically routes the power to the frog. Now to connect all of those feeder wires to the wiring bus, I'm going to be using these Scotch lock connectors. And let me just give you a quick demo here how that works. This fits over your 14 gauge wire. Make sure it's all the way inside. And then you thread those feeders in through here, the 22 gauge feeders. And then you take a pair of pliers and you crimp this down, just like that. And this little lid comes over the top, locks into place. That's why they're called suitcase connectors, because it's like a little suitcase. That's all there is to it. Fast and easy. Well, I've got the slide switches installed on 4 of the 5 turnouts. You can see on this one up here, I had to add a little bit of extra HO scale real estate to the sub road bed to have a place to attach that slide switch. And I've also found some small brass screws to hold these slide switches in place so they don't move around, and there are little slots there. Another thing you can do is if you have a problem with this wire popping out of the turnout throw bar, which does sometimes happen, you can do what I did and just put a little spot of epoxy on there, and that should hold that in there just fine. And now I want to drop some feeder wires down from each of these sections of flex track down to that DCC bus, and for that I've got some 22 gauge wire. So I've got a 7/64 bit in my drill, which is really close to the same diameter as this wire. And I'm going to go in and put holes on either side of the pieces of flex track, try to fit it right in between the ties there. This is some solid core wire, and I like to strip off about 1/2 inch of the insulation. This 22 AWG wire is a little bit heavier than what I've used in the past for these DCC feeders, but I find that it works better with the suitcase connectors, and I believe the heavier gauge wire will do a better job of carrying that DCC signal to the locomotives. And we'll just push that down through. And then I want to make a little bend in the wire like that, and use the tension of the wire to hold it up here in the rail webbing, you know, right in the middle of that I shape of the rail. And I can just hit each side with a little bit of this 6040 rosin core lead solder. And we pull that wire down from below, and most of that insulation is going to disappear down below the roadbed. And the rest will be hidden with paint and ballast and that kind of thing. And now those get hooked up to the DCC bus with those handy dandy Scotch lock suitcase connectors. No stripping the wires, no soldering. Just crimp it, lock it, and you're done. Honestly, don't know how I got by for so long without these things. And now every other individual piece of flex track that I put in between these turnouts will get the exact same treatment. And that way, every square inch of track on here will have full electrical power and full DCC signal going to it, and we won't have to rely on things like, you know, rail joiners and other connections to carry that current and to carry that signal through. Now there's just one more set of connections that I need to make, and that's for those other wires coming out of the turnout. We already hooked up the frogs, but there are 2 other wires from each turnout that route power to the guardrails and the points and things like that. And even though they're color-coded, it's not quite as easy as hooking up the red to the red wire and the black to the black wire. The way Alan has set it up, the straight track is the yellow wire and the divergent is red. So that's actually going to change depending on whether it's a right or left turnout or which direction it's facing on the layout. Where it hooks up to the DCC bus, which wire it hooks up to is going to change depending on that. And so I've drawn myself a little wiring diagram. Crude, I know, but this will help my limited lizard brain figure this all out and make sure I get it hooked up without any short circuits. So let's see. This crossover, the red wire from this turnout connects to the yellow wire from this turnout, and then both of those connect to the red wire on the DCC bus. And then vice versa for the black wire. Oh yeah, we're getting a real bird's nest now. And something similar down on this end. And that is the last connection for this part of the layout. Nothing left to do now except to clean the track and put a locomotive on there and see how it runs. I've got Blackstone C19 number 345 up here on the track. Got my NCE power cab plugged in and ready to go, all booted up. Number 345 up here in the LCD screen. I think we'll just give it a simple forward and reverse to see how we roll through these turnouts. Now we'll switch over to the other track. See how we go through there. Oh, I love it when a plan comes together. Now I'll flip the switches for the crossover. We'll see how she handles that. Nice. So nice. Everything works the way it's supposed to, and I call that a win any day of the week. And I just got to say that I am super impressed with the quality and attention to detail that Alan Loiseau puts into these custom-built turnouts. And remember, you can get other things besides HOn3. Check out his website over at empire-trackworks.com for all the different scales and configurations he has available. And if you don't see what you want, contact him directly and chances are he can make it happen for you. But that's going to wrap it up for this week. I want to thank you all so much for watching today. And I'm going to be back next week with another project for the HOn3 Goldfield and Calico layout. So I hope you're subscribed with those notifications turned on so you won't miss that. And in the meantime, you can also follow Thunder Mesa for free on Patreon. That's patreon.com/ThunderMesa, or on Instagram at thunder.mesa. And check out the resources available on the Thunder Mesa Studio website at thundermesa.studio. As always, a huge thank you to our Patreon members who help to make these projects and these videos possible. Until next time, keep moving forward, everybody. Adios for now.